My name is Hansen. I am a gray and I work as a lab technician for the hybridization program. We create gray human hybrids as my species can no longer produce offspring. We extract genetic material from humans by energetic procedures or from orgies that take place in the Great Room. I've heard stories about the Great Room from my ancestors. My oldest ancestor who founded the program met a human once in dreams. They connected in the Great Room on all levels, even of affection. I have a fraction of humanoid inside me. But since I'm a designer, I attempt to keep it hidden at all times. It is growing harder. I'm starting to feel things. I long to enter into the Great Room. I dream about it. Is it shiny and red and filled with downy cushions? Is it filled with water and music? What is it like to touch another human being? What is it like to unite with a being other than yourself? To lock orbs, hold appendages, grasp, pass energy through chambers, exchange, breathe, exchange, breathe, release. I can't want that. I'm not supposed to want that. I'm not supposed to feel anything for these children I create every day. Children that I'm told I can never have. But I do. I feel protection for them, feel linked to them. I want to meet Luo. I want to visit their world. I'm forbidden. Donk donk, H just pounded on the door to Lysen's office. Find them, the Vanks growled. They will be here, Commander! Their home chamber was unoccupied and they did not materialize on any recording. Shloop! H just pounded the door open with their spindly arms. The lab was empty. Too bad! H just shouted. The Vanks slimed around the room. There was nowhere for them to go. On the table was Eliason's sack with a tag on it that read Test Tube E. The Vanks opened it and pulled out a gold Terran clock. Decoration. Elison was not lying when they said they had no decoration inside their home chamber. The Vanks snorted. On the other side of the tag was a message. Commander, I know what I want now. That vessel has not navigated. I am the only being that can choose that for myself. The door glowed effervescent and opened. A soft voice sang. To Epoch, my friend, Una said, and Elison could understand her. To Epoch, many gratitudes. They touched foreheads. Then Elison entered into the Great Room.
Keep it going for Catherine Hansen. So I gotta ask, one of my first thoughts, I know you have some background with like podcasting and radio scripts and that, at least based on what I saw you do here most recently.
Right.
And that definitely leapt out at me with that there's like a rhythm to this, there's dramatic pauses and sound effects and character voices, and like, to what degree do you think about writing for performance when you start a piece like this?
I guess I do think about that maybe almost automatically, because I am primarily a performer. Like, I just started getting into storytelling like the past few years, so yeah, I guess in order to make it interesting so it's not just reading, I definitely kind of, write it that way.
Yeah. No, this was great. Would you call this a horror story? It feels like it has aspects of one to me.
Right, well, it's interesting because, when we were talking about what I would write for this, because I I think I'm more connected to horror, so I was trying to do more sci-fi, which is kind of what you do. But there's usually aspects of horror in my stories. But I also try to put humor in there too, obviously.
I mean, doctrines of genetic purity are scary. Was that a starting point for you? I'm just sort of wondering how something like this germinates for you.
Well, it's interesting because the show I did last year was kind of taken from a show I did with some friends in 2017 called SaucerCon, where that was like a devised piece with a few people about alien abductions and a lot of different aspects of that. And then after we did that show, we wanted to do more, and so we did a lot of research on our own. And so through my research, I was researching a lot of, gray aliens, origins, hybrid child, and so from that research came a character that I wrote that I kind of did a monologue similar to this for the show last year about this lab technician who mixes human and gray DNA. And kind of from that came the story. It was like, well, what if they did have maternal instincts? What if they had other instincts that were not normal for their species? And so that kind of is how it came.
That is the gray stuff is a wild rabbit hole to go to. I've poked at it a couple of times and it goes so much deeper than I think it does.
It does, and like the story of like the Luo and like the hybrid children, like I went down a rabbit hole with, I'm not sure, whatever you want to believe, whatever you do believe, that I respect that, but yeah, I mean like it got pretty insane with these people who are very convinced of all of this like happening and how people will pay money to go there to their conventions, and I was like, wow, this is weird.
So are these last two things you've done for Convergence related in your mind? Is this a shared universe developing?
I think so. Like, I was telling a friend about this story, and I feel like it could be maybe like a movie, like a grim Christopher Nolan movie, where this lab technician is constantly just trying to keep secret, but they keep not being secret,
Yeah.
But also, like, I mean, there are like way darker portions that I didn't really talk about, like, forcing humans to take place in this is not cool, So I didn't talk about that, which is, I think it's sort of implied in this whole universe, not in my universe, but like the whole alien hybrid universe.
Oh yeah, consent on the part of humans is not
Yes.
something that seems to be taking place.
Exactly right.
Awesome, we'll keep it going for Catherine Hansen. All right, we got a double bill here, which means I got one more performer for you who has done just a little bit of everything. Is that fair? She's worked at the Renaissance Festival and produced at the Minnesota Fringe. She was a part of Vilification Tennis. She was one of the big wigs at Fearless Comedy. She has a willingness to do things. And in the arts community, that is an easily exploitable trait. So, please welcome to the stage, Jena Young.
Today I wore my mask so that you all know who I am, storyteller. Now I'm going to take it off. So yeah, I'm just going to do a few shorter stories. So I am super excited to have an opportunity to do some of this here at Convergence. I don't think I've ever, have I done any, I don't think I've done short story work here before.
Have you?
No. Mostly vilification tennis, and then people are like, oh my god, you're a horrible person, or oh my god, you're a wonderful person. Like, that's basically been my past. So, yeah, some of these might deal with anger or other upsetting emotions, so be aware. Let's start with, okay, I'm just going to pull the audience. Would you rather start with a story or start with a lecture story? Story, all right. Let's start with this one. Oh. I'm gonna adjust this just a touch, I'm very short. She always loved dark, damp places. Tina wasn't just picked on in high school. She was the kids that got picked on. Her hair was often stringy, she had dirt under her nails. She was somehow both bony and round, all in the wrong places, and she smelled. I don't mean a little. She smelled like grease and BO and rotting fish. It was a smell to fill a room, one that no one could ignore. It wasn't her fault. Her parents never taught her the basics of human hygiene. If you were being kind, it was because they didn't understand how cleanliness worked. They didn't understand daily showers and shampoos. What's the point if you're just going to get dirty again at the factory the next day? It never all comes out anyway. If you were being less kind, you would say they never taught Tina hygiene because they were rarely around to do so. If you were feeling unkind, you would say they never taught her because they rarely thought about her long enough to think that she should need to know. That morning, Tina had pulled on a secondhand gym suit that came pre-stained and tried to pull her hair back into something less stringy. She'd never quite figured out how to pull her hair into a ponytail without getting all these awkward bumps on the top of her head. She sighed and thought, fuck it. Undid the hair binder and just let her hair hang. It would be easier to hide her face behind it loose anyway. She went to the kitchen and opened the fridge. The milk was obviously bad. No cereal this morning. There was some leftover casserole that didn't look too moldy, so Tina heated it up, still in the Tupperware. She knew something was wrong as soon as she swallowed. She looked at the food on her plate, but it all looked okay. Ground beef, canned mushrooms, instant mashed potatoes, green beans. She supposed that the ground beef might have been undercooked, but she couldn't detect any pink. How long ago had it been since she made it? Tina decided not to finish her breakfast. She hopped on the bus and took her customary seat about 2/3 of the way back, the awkward tire seat. For some reason, Lisa Baker took a seat across from her. Lisa wasn't popular. She was also picked on a lot, which is possibly why she spent so much time on Tina. Tina was not feeling well and was not happy at the prospect of having to deal with Lisa's attitude today. Lisa started calling out to Tina, who just ignored her. Her eyes hurt and her head hurt. Her stomach hurt. If Lisa was going to keep this up, Tina might just move closer to the bus driver. Commonly a move that created more teasing later, but right now, Tina could hardly concentrate. At the next stop, Tina got up to move. Lisa hit her. Not as hard as Tina had been hit before, it was a warning hit to keep her in her place. Tina kept moving forward. Lisa reached out and grabbed a handful of Tina's hair to pull her back, and the entire bus got quiet. There was Lisa, holding a chunk of Tina's hair in her hand. Tina didn't cry out. She just turned around and looked. After a moment's silence, Tina started to laugh. She didn't know what had gotten into her. She just found the whole thing so stupid. Why? Why should they pick on Tina? And more importantly, why did she keep letting them? There was something about that fistful of hair. Just looking at it, that hair that she could never convince to do what she wanted it to, there it was, in Lisa's hand and not on Tina's head. The bus driver told Tina to go sit down, and that's when Tina experienced an incredible gut-wrenching pain. It was worse than any punch she had ever taken, and she doubled over, and then she knew. It was the mushrooms. She knew because she could feel them becoming a part of her. The churning inside of her stomach wasn't food poisoning. It was her insides being rearranged on a highly molecular level. Her DNA was being reconstructed to accommodate the moldy foreign body to incorporate it into her own. Tina collapsed on the floor of the bus, doubled over. The bus driver shouted at her. Kids moved away from her. Only Lisa stood, Tina's hair still clutched in her hand, wondering what she had done. Tina stood up. She was now an awkward shade of olive green, and her eyes locked onto Lisa. Children screamed at the sight of her. Many abandoned the bus. Lisa's eyes widened. Tina held out a hand, palm facing Lisa, and shot something at her. Spores. A cloud of sickly green, like a thick, moldy dust, billowing towards Lisa. Lisa was covered. She took a deep breath to scream and inhale. The look, she looked pained, then sick. And then she fell to the ground, her eyes still wide, pleading. And then Tina walked away. She never found out what happened to Lisa. She never went back to the school, and she certainly didn't go home. She walked until she found a nice, dark underpass and planted herself next to a sewage line. She always loved dark, damp places. That's it, thank you. That is based on personal experience. I was definitely the kid who got picked on by everybody else, and Lisa Baker is a real person. Yeah. All right, what's going to put it? Oh, I got plenty of time. All right. Now we're going to do the lecture one. What is reality? Can universes collide? And does Schrodinger's cat play with a ball of string theory? Erwin Schrödinger is best known for his work regarding quantum theory, particularly about his thought experiment involving a cat in order to explain the flawed interpretation of quantum superposition. The Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics essentially states that an object in a physical system can simultaneously exist in all possible configurations, but observing the system forces the system to collapse and forces the object into just one of those possible states. Schrödinger disagreed. Now, what does this have to do with cats? Well, Schrödinger wanted people to imagine that a cat, poison, a Geiger counter, radioactive material, and a hammer were inside a sealed container. The amount of radioactive material was minuscule enough that it only had a 50-50 shot of being detected over the course of an hour. If the Geiger counter detected radiation, the hammer would smash the poison, killing the cat. Until someone opened the container and observed the system, it was impossible to predict the cat's outcome. Thus, the cat would exist in some superposition state of being both alive and dead. Our own curiosity killed the cat. Of course, Schrödinger claimed this was ridiculous. Quantum superposition did not work with the large objects such as cats because it is impossible for an organism to be simultaneously alive and dead. Thus, he reasoned that the Copenhagen interpretation must be inherently flawed. While many people incorrectly assumed Schrödinger supported the premise behind the thought experiment, he didn't. His entire point was that it was impossible. While it is true that modern experiments have revealed that while quantum superposition does work for tiny things, like electrons, larger objects must be regarded differently. But what is a larger object if not a collection of tiny ones? What if the state of one tiny object inside of a larger object is perceived in a different light? And how large is a person's perception? My boyfriend and I had an argument. We've all had them, the argument that is set off by a slight misunderstanding, a word or a sentence taken the wrong way, that assumes meaning unintended, and each partner argues from a different point of perspective. The argument escalates into something larger, and both parties are strongly affected. We were mad and hurt for days. When we were finally able to talk through the hurt and the frustration, it took hours. And we were able to talk through the argument backwards until we found the thing spoken, the tiny phrase, observed by the other through their own filters, taking on a different meaning than that intended by the other person. What we think we perceive is processed by the brain to construct our view of the world. We apply our own filters to help us sort out what fits our reality and what does not, to determine what is true and what is false. We create our own realities. We are the holder of our own truths. We are the centers of our own universes. I'm certain we have all had this argument. Most of these escalate from a defensiveness based on a two-word question. Who's right? Assuming everyone is honest, everyone is right. To their own understanding, to their own universe. What they believe to be for them is actually what is true. Their reality is reality in their universe. If they did not believe they were right, that truth wouldn't exist in their universe. Matthew Clevin is a New York University physicist studying the effects of colliding universes. His theory is that our universe exists as a sort of bubble with other universes, and that these universes float around in the nebulous space of universe existence. They can collide with each other, affecting each other in altering states of perception. That we may borrow bits of reality from other universes, and we can find those bits of universes in our own. When worlds collide, we always take a little something with us. When we see things, observe things, those things can either solidify or change our truths. Maybe not a lot. Maybe it's just a tiny shift in perspective. But since quantum superposition only works for tiny things, sometimes a small shift in perspective is all we need to change a universe. When we share space with a partner, what we are saying is that we want our universes to collide. Not to become one, but to interact and to shape each other. That we acknowledge the truth of their universe. When two people get married, they are not joining worlds, but sharing each other's worlds. When we promise to honor, we are promising to observe them in a promising light. That when we observe the tiny particle, when it is in that state of both existing and not, when we could mean one thing or another, that we take the more positive interpretation. That we assume the best of each other, that we will honor their truths and assist in taking care of their worlds, building them up in tiny ways by observing them as beautiful. Because entire worlds can be built up or brought down by a tiny observation, and arguments can be had or avoided by how we perceive one word. Does Schrodinger's cat play with a ball of string theory? Yes, but it's very, very small. I also do weddings. I'm a registered officiant in the state of Minnesota, so, if you want that one in there. One more or no?
You got time for one more?
One more, all right. Come on, buddy. Tablet of Doom. Let's see. Do you want something sad or something sad?
What kind of sad?
That really is the question, isn't it? All right, this one actually doesn't have any kind of sci-fi, fantasy, whatever in it, but I really like this one and haven't gotten to perform it for a while. So this one does deal with anger management issue and alcoholism. That kind of sad. There's your answer. So there's your warning. She lit her cigarette. She took a deep breath, inhaled, and let it out slowly. This was her meditation. She would come out to the edge of the grasslands, smoke a cigarette, and let her thoughts come and go as they choose. Today, she had a lot of thoughts that wouldn't go. He left her. Took Fireball with him, the asshole. Fireball was the one constant in their marriage. They found him at the side of the road on one of their early trips, not quite puppy-sized. They had pulled over for a quick pause to watch the sunset over the prairie grasses, everything lit up in reds. A light breeze blowing through, gently swaying the tall grasses. It looked like everything was on fire. And out of the grass flames bounded Fireball. There was no one else around, no buildings for miles, only an ocean of grass and a puppy. They decided to take him with them for a while. Maybe they could find him a shelter, but by the time they got to the next town, they just couldn't let Fireball go. She took a breath, inhaled, and let it out slowly. There was a lot they could have done differently. She could have been more conscientious of her word choices. He could have sympathized more. Maybe she shouldn't have nagged him about the roof so much. Maybe she shouldn't have fought with him over money for the new bed sheets. Maybe she shouldn't have given in so much on the bigger things. She wouldn't have fought so hard on the little things. They let the little things build up. Weeds took over their lives, their home. They choked on the weeds. She took a breath, inhaled, and let it out slowly. When they fought, Fireball wouldn't pick sides. He would sit between them with sad eyes, watching, sometimes whimpering. Eventually, Fireball would start barking, and that was Tom's cue to go to town for the local bar. She would stay behind and pick up anything that had been thrown, clean and sweep, Fireball at her heels trying to help. Eventually, Tom would come home smelling of whiskey, and she would help him to bed. Fireball would lay between them. She took a breath, inhaled, and let it out slowly. When Fireball was younger, he loved to sit next to the fire pit, his back turned to it. He wasn't very careful with his tail, and they had to keep golden fur from catching fire. He was just so happy, and his tail would flap, sometimes land at the edge of the pit. He never did catch, but they were always concerned. Maybe they were over-concerned, like so many things, trying to make sure it was all done right, fixating on the one little thing. They're all that one little thing. Couldn't see the forest for the tree. Not like you'd find many trees out here anyway. She took a breath, inhaled, and let it out slowly. The grass here was littered with weeds, thistles and shepherd's purse, mustard and foxtail. Some days she found them colorful and pleasant. Today, she found them distracting. She wasn't one for clearing out weeds, never had the knack for it. She'd tug and pull and not quite get to the root. The weeds would just be back later. What she needed was a prairie fire. Something to get rid of the weeds, a thorough cleaning, baptism through fire, renewal, a big, glorious blaze to remove all the clutter, restore the balance, and to move on. She took a breath, inhaled, and let it out slowly. She carefully put out the cigarette, making sure the embers were fully extinguished. She walked home, wishing Fireball was there to help her clean. Thank you.
All right, keep it going for Jena Young. So I guess today's our day for talking quantum theory and self-destruction.
Yeah, apparently that's just a theme that's happening.
We're doing a show later this afternoon with a surprising number of overlapping themes.
Why did you ask me to do that show again, Phillip? Is there any kind of connection? Yeah.
So I smirked to myself when you mentioned that first story was autobiographical, because that was going to be my first question to you.
Yes! Called it.
Though, as far as I know, you don't shoot spores from your hands. I feel like if you did, it would have come up before now. Like, I can think of a number of situations we've been in where that would be
That's fair. That is absolutely fair. No, that part may have been a little bit more fantastical, exaggerated. Yeah.
So my next question, based on what you just performed for us, is: are you okay?
That's a really good question. I think so. No, actually, I'm doing great. But I think one of the things that I do in my storytelling is process all of the tricky emotions, and I think it's really helpful in doing that to exaggerate or create areas that are easier to put those emotions in. There's like, I have never been, no, take that back, I have been in a situation where alcoholism was an issue. Not mine, but I've never like had to deal with cleaning up after or had like this kind of a recurring situation. I'm usually pretty good at just being like, well, that sucks, fuck off, I'm out. But I think in being able to explore those kinds of emotions and those kinds of situations, it helps you better deal with when a situation comes up that is similar or mimics or whatever. It's emotional practice.
Yeah.
So.
And you feel so with that first story that resolves into sort of a fantastical twist, do you find that that's something that's helpful in talking about this kind of thing, or because I know I've done a lot of different kinds of storytelling. If I do something that is directly autobiographical, everyone comes up to me and does the so sympathetic.
Are you all right? Do you need to talk?
But the ones where I feel like I've really vomited my heart out, the audience tend to be the sort of weird expressionistic, like things that aren't obviously about me, but those are the ones that are really about me. But I don't know how you feel about.
Well, now I have some concerns and questions for you with that new information.
But yeah, I mean, how do you feel about using fantasy, sci-fi, genre fiction as a way of?
It's definitely a thing that I enjoy incorporating. I will say that as a storyteller, I tend to be much more of a humanity, emotional focus on the feelings and the relationships first, and then the rest of it is set dressing. And I think there are some things that you can do with science fiction and fantasy as set dressing that you just can't do without. To talk about going into a dark, warm place, like that evokes something that you just can't get outside of like, oh, well, I'm going to my room, that's my dark, warm place. Like that doesn't evoke that, it doesn't capture the feelings of it. Whereas being able to use that kind of a thing in something that is a bit more glorified really helps drive that point home.
Yeah, there's something about like embracing the strangeness
of
that, like dark warm place is a simile versus dark warm place is a horrible metaphor.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, we'll keep it going for Jena Young. And for both of you, if someone heard you tonight, they love your stuff, they would like to see or hear you again, is there a place they can do that, online or otherwise? The answer could be no. I'm just,
I mean, later today I've got a couple of shows.
There you go.
God, that is an old shot.
Right. Well, you didn't send me an image, so I looked at your website.
Well, later today I'm doing a show with this guy, Phillip something.
Yo-yo.
Phillip something. There's a lot of words involved. So yeah, I'll be performing Concept of Anxiety, 3:30.
I hope so, yeah, because
Oh,
that's what I'm going to hear.
Let's just show up at that time and see if that happens. Also later today at 8:30, I'm going to go this way. I'm producing a show called Glasses and Spectacles. It is storytelling with challenges. So can somebody tell a story while standing on one foot? Can somebody tell a story while playing Jenga? Can you tell a story while solving an algebra equation? And it's contest style, and the winner will get to tell a story uninterrupted and without challenge. So I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a blast. I've got Thomas T., Michael Deneen, Jenna Packey, and Duck Washington. Will all be playing that with us. So.
I'm willing to venture my answer is no. I cannot tell a story while doing any of. I can barely tell a story while it's the only thing I'm focused on.
It's going to be fun. We're not taking ourselves seriously in this one. It's going to be a good, fun time.
And Catherine, you mentioned an upcoming horror fest show.
Yes. Well, if you want to know info about me, if you want to look on Minnesota Playlist, my profile on there has links to a podcast I wrote and links to my IMDb page. But yes, I will be doing a show with the Catacomb Collective on Basement for this year's Twin Cities Horror Festival. And I'm also acting in a Fringe play for the Fringe Festival, and our last performance is tomorrow. So.
Awesome. All
It
right.
might be somewhere.
We're just around wandering.
Thank you so much for coming. We have a ton of shows left here at Wordslingers Way over the next 48 hours. We've got more storytelling and poetry and comedy and authors and all sorts of great stuff. We hope we see you again. We hope you had a good time. And thank you for coming.